Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Hello, welcome to another edition of the MemoPOD. This being a Christmas edition, I guess if you want to call it that. I have absolutely nothing Christmas related prepared. If you're wanting all of that stuff, you should have been watching the Bible teaching over the last 3 weeks. You've had that, so that's where you'll get your Christmas fix, if that's what you're looking for. The topics that I want to get into on the MemoPod today are not Christmas related. I will simply start off with this. This isn't going to be the main thrust of what I'm saying, but I am going to tell you right now, you cannot convince me that it is not intentional. You will never be able, maybe you could, but I highly doubt that you would be capable of convincing me that what the progressive side of the political world is doing in this country is not intentionally, okay, I'm going to clarify this after I say it, intentionally trying to get Donald Trump to be nominated by the Republican Party. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but this is a conspiracy I am 100% buying into. 100%. The idea that the movers and the shakers on the left desperately want Donald Trump to be the Republican Party nominee. You cannot convince me that they don't. Not with what they're doing. This whole move by the Colorado State Supreme Court to ban Donald Trump from the ballot. Here's what I'm going to clarify. I'm going to clarify in that there are those on the left that hate this guy to the point where they're doing this just because they want to stick it to him as much as they possibly can. There are those who fall into that camp, who are not bright enough to realize what they're doing is actually giving him oxygen and keeping him alive in the political world. But I think the majority of folks on the left that are behind all of this, the indictments, all of it, I truly believe that it is intentional, that the polls that are out that show Donald Trump surging way ahead of all of his Republican opponents, I'm telling you, I think that it is all a media construct. I think it's all an intentional effort to get Donald Trump the nomination, because Donald Trump is the only one, with the economy like it is, with the Biden administration like it is, Donald Trump's the only one where they stand a chance. That's because he's the only one that generates enough hatred to motivate leftist voters to get out and say, okay, yeah, we'll sign on to another 4 years of Biden. That's the only thing. And to get independent voters to either stay home or to actually vote for Joe Biden. That's the only way. You're not going to get them out to vote for Joe Biden. So you got to get them out to vote against the other side. And Donald Trump's the one that they're going to be able to do that against. And that's what this is. Sorry, I just kicked the screen. That's what this is. You can't convince me otherwise. Because it doesn't even make sense to remove him from the ballot. You're going to remove him from the ballot based on the 14th Amendment, but the 14th Amendment clearly states and stipulates only Congress can do what Colorado has now attempted to do. Everybody knows that they can't do this. They know. If these are legal minds, which I'm assuming to get on the state Supreme Court, you at least have to have some type of legal knowledge, constitutional knowledge. You have to know. He hasn't been indicted, but he has not been convicted of anything. And without a conviction for insurrection and all of that, this all falls flat. And it's not going to be... And we play along. The right plays along and, oh, we got to do something about it. And it's just, we're on the strings. I really think that's what it is. Obviously, I know some of you are going to disagree. And that's, how do we have that conversation? I don't know. Because you're going to get mad at me and tell me that's not what this is. This is political persecution. And Donald Trump's the only one. And they're scared of him and all of this. And I'm going to tell you, no, that's not the case. I mean... You get any of the other Republicans in, they can pardon Donald Trump and it can all be over and it can all be water under the bridge. They want Donald Trump to be the face of the Republican Party. They do. Every fiber of my being is convinced of that reality. And I don't know. I don't know how we progress from this point because... So many of my friends on the right are completely pulled in by this, and we got to stand firm and we got to defend. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that what they're doing is right. I'm not suggesting that we let it go. I'm just suggesting that we don't play their game. And that's where I think we're going to end up. So... It's kind of this helpless feeling that I have, like you're watching a slow motion train wreck and you see it unfolding. Or that hypothetical situation where you know a disaster is going to happen. Like you've gone back in time and you're trying to warn people about the Hindenburg disaster, but nobody's going to believe you. What are you going to say? Oh, I'm from the future. That's kind of how I feel. Like I can see the future. I know what's coming. And you say it, but you can't convince people. I'm not saying that I've done time travel. I haven't. But I feel like in some ways that I actually have. I don't know. It's like you see it all unfolding in front of you. So anyway, that's what I just wanted to start by saying, that I can't, you can't tell me it's not all intentional. But this is actually where I wanted to start this week. Last summer, and I'd forgotten about this encounter until something just happened. Last summer, I ran into a former high school classmate of mine. Now, I'm not going to use his real name because I went to a fairly small high school. I mean, for some of you, it's a big high school because I had 105 in my graduating class, thereabouts to 100, somewhere in that range. So for some of you, that's a very big graduating class. For others of you, you're like 100 people. Like you probably knew everybody's name. Right. Yeah, I did. But because of the size of the school and the size of the class, I'm not going to use the guy's name because just protect identity and all of that. But I'm about 200 miles from home. I'm on a speaking trip this last summer. And typically summer, I don't have a lot of speaking trips, but this was one that I took. And I'm out there, and I'm filling up at the gas pump. And as many of you have come to realize, if there is inclement weather at all, during the winter, it's just cold. So pretty much all winter long, it's going to be this way. And in the summer, if it's been really rainy or unseasonably cool or something like that, just not pleasant outside, the people that work in the gas stations don't come out and refill the receipt thing in your gas pump. They're not going to do it. Probably don't get paid enough to want to walk out there and do it. So they just don't. And if you want the receipt, you got to go inside. And so that happens to me now, I would say, well over 75% of the time. Maybe I'm just hitting the wrong gas stations, but it just happens. If I ever own a gas station chain, which I think is distinctly possible that it will happen, that's going to be rule number one. Clean bathrooms will come in down the list. Okay? You got to have the expectation you're going to be grossed out if you walk into the bathrooms at the gas station. But having the receipt, like if you're going to have pay at the pump, then don't make people walk inside to get their receipt. That defeats the purpose. You just go in and pay if you're going to make me do that. Just a real pet peeve of mine. But anyway, so I go inside to get my receipt. And I am, and this isn't something I'm proud of, but I have been conditioned by our modern technology to need constant mental stimulation. So standing in line behind other people, I'm bored. And God forbid I actually look around and maybe make eye contact with people. No, I got to be in my phone and I'm scrolling what's happening in the news. I mean, there could have been a meteor getting ready to strike Earth, but I'm... by the way, those of you that just listen to the MemoPOD and don't watch it, you have no idea what I was doing right there. I was pretending I was scrolling my phone. Anyway, okay, so I'm doing that, and I got up and I started talking to the person at the register. I needed my receipt. I think I was on pump number 4, whatever it was. And just by the sound of my voice, this former classmate of mine recognized me. That makes me a little self-conscious. I've never cared for my voice. I think there's a lot of people that don't like their voices, and I'm one of them. I know that it's a bit of a unique voice. I do, and I don't necessarily like that, but it is what it is, and he recognized it. And so he comes over. I'm just going to call him Sam. Sam comes walking over. He's got an armful of gas station food. So you got your Funyuns and your Cheetos and all the other stuff. Armful of that stuff. And he says, Peter Eck, what in the world are you doing here? And I stood and talked to Sam for probably at least 10 minutes that day. And it was a very big blessing in my life. Because what I found out is Sam had been through it. And the truth is that I was not overly surprised to hear that, because Sam had a lot of problems. We were in high school in an era where there weren't a lot of accommodations, and there wasn't like IEPs and all of that stuff. If he were in school now, he would have all kinds of accommodations for learning disabilities and cognitive deficiencies and mental slowness and all of that stuff. And I never really knew what made Sam slow, why he was slower. But I knew he had been held back twice. He was kind of like the 20-year-old that was graduating with us. And when he walked across the stage at graduation, his high school diploma cover did not have a diploma on the inside of it. I don't actually know if he ever finished school and got the diploma, if he ever got his GED. That didn't come up. I wasn't going to lead with that. Hey, did you ever actually get a diploma? But this is what else I remembered about Sam. He kind of got made fun of. For a few different reasons. He was very rough around the edges. He had a potty mouth. And I think a lot of that, now looking back with with wisdom, maybe being older, I see that, and as a teacher, I see it as a defense mechanism. You lash out at people and you curse at people when you are hurt and you're being mistreated. He did not have a good home life. He did not have any solid example from his parents. As I recall, he didn't even live with his parents. I think he lived with his grandparents. He had no connection to faith. He was a loner. I mean, I was friendly. And as he told me, I was one of his friends in high school. And that makes you feel good. I'm glad that he saw me that way. It kind of makes me feel guilty that I didn't do more. And that actually comes up because he goes on and tells me that he spent 5 years in prison for some poor choices that he had made. Honestly, I wasn't shocked. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, holy cow, what happened? But I wasn't overly surprised. You know what did surprise me, though? Was when he said, while he was serving time, those 5 years that he was in prison, he had found Jesus, or Jesus had found him, however you want to put it. That one of the prison guards had encouraged him to go to the Bible study that met like once a week. There was a local church, and they would come in and do the Bible study. It was something different for the folks in prison to do, for the inmates to do. They ought to go to that. Might be good for you. And Sam had gone, he'd heard the gospel of Jesus, and he made the best decision of his life. And when he's telling me all this, I was just ecstatic about the whole thing. And I remember I apologized to him. And I was like, I'm sorry I didn't do a better job in high school of being a better example of Jesus, of talking to you about Jesus, or even inviting you to church or anything like that. And he made me feel better. He said, well, it wouldn't have mattered where I was at that point in time. My heart wasn't open to God, so it didn't matter. But now, I mean, this dude still struggles with stuff. He still has anger issues and self-control. The passions that led him to prison the first time, they haven't disappeared completely. But he says he works every day to make them obedient to Christ. He now belongs to Jesus. Doesn't mean he won't ever make mistakes, but he now belongs to Jesus. And I'd forgotten about Sam until just, I don't know, like a week ago. My social media feed started getting flooded. You're going to wonder how in the world this has anything to do with it. With comments that have been made recently by Dr. Anthony Fauci, Dr. COVID. Fauci just recently did an interview with the BBC. And in the course of that interview, where they talked about a lot of stuff, about why he has security now and the threats against him and all of this stuff, which you actually do feel bad for the guy. But he talked about his lapsed Catholic faith. That he was a Catholic, but he wasn't a practicing. Let me play this clip for you. This is the portion of the interview that I saw repeated and reposted and all of that stuff online a number of times that actually brought my encounter with Sam this summer back into my mind. I'll explain how. This is what was said.
There's Dahlgren Chapel where Chris and I were
That's
were
where
married.
you were married, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Do you still go there?
No.
You don't practice
No,
anymore, do you?
I don't, no.
Why?
A number of complicated reasons.
Go on. We have a whole corridor.
First of all, I think my own personal ethics on life are, I think, enough to keep me going on the right path. And I think that there are enough negative aspects about the organizational church that you're very well aware of. I'm not against it. I identify myself as a Catholic. I was raised, I was baptized, I was confirmed, I was married in the church. My children were baptized in the church. But as far as practicing it, it seems almost like a pro forma thing that I don't really need to do.
Okay, I got to tell you, as a Christian, I'm completely confused by that. I really am. And maybe some of you who are Christians, you're not as confused by it, but I really struggle wrapping my mind around it when people say things like, it's not just Dr. Fauci, that he doesn't practice his faith anymore. I mean, faith is who you are. It becomes your identity. You have your identity in Christ. So what do you mean you don't practice it anymore? And again, I know people say that, but I never really know what that means. Do you just mean that you're not going to church right now? You're not following the commands of Jesus right now? Because if that's the case, then just say that. Instead of saying, well, I'm not practicing right now, just say, I'm not being obedient to Jesus right now. Yeah, I was raised in the church. I became a Christian, but I'm not really being obedient to Jesus right now. I get it. We'd rather talk in euphemisms. We'd rather say things like, well, I'm practicing or I'm non-practicing. That's a lot more fun, but it just, to me, let's just be honest about what's going on. Faith without works, James says this in the New Testament, faith without works is dead. So if you're not practicing your faith, if it's not coming out of you in the form of fruit, then your faith is dead. So just say that. Yeah, no, I was married in that church, I was baptized in that church, but my faith right now is dead. And I understand maybe you're going to think I'm being uncharitable to Dr. Fauci, but you heard what he said. Quote, I'll just read this to you. First of all, I think my own personal ethics on life are, I think, enough to keep me going on the right path. Says that church almost seems like a pro forma thing that I don't need to do. I don't need it. Yeah, Jesus established it. I don't need it. My personal ethics, you don't understand. Most people, they may need that, but not me. My personal ethics are strong enough to guide me down the right path. And I love the Elton John piano music that they had in the background there on the BBC, because it kind of lightens the mood, given the fact that Dr. Fauci is elucidating the counsel of Satan himself. That's Satan himself with that line. The idea that we can be our own gods of our own little private universes. We can keep our own counsel. It's just as good as any counsel we'd get from Scripture or anywhere else, or from a priest or from a preacher. We can maintain our own ethics and steer clear of that institution that Jesus himself inaugurated after he was resurrected. Where's that going to come from? Where is that thought process going to come from if it's not the Prince of Darkness? I mean, either you trust Jesus enough to follow him, or you decide you're going to trust yourself. And Dr. Fauci has stated what his choice is, that he's going to trust himself and his own ethics. So let's not obfuscate that fact with some silly notion that he's not practicing, or he's not passing the bar exam. You pass the bar and then you can practice or not practice. No, that's not what it is. If you come to Christ, you no longer live, but Christ lives in you. You don't just turn that on and off. That's a pro forma thing. I don't really need to do it. Nobody's ever obviously explained what faith is in Christ is to Dr. Fauci. And maybe that lays at the feet of the Catholic church that he went to. I don't know. I mean, I guess I would be inclined to lay the blame at his feet. He's a smart guy. He can read the scriptures. He knows what it says. Or he could. But anyway, so I watched that video. Dr. Fauci here, walking down these elaborate, ornate hallways of power. He's being interviewed by the biggest broadcast networks in the world. He's eating well. He's enjoying mind-boggling levels of wealth and privilege. Insane amounts. Living such a lavish lifestyle. But he's doing it all without Jesus because he doesn't need Jesus to feel fulfilled. And that's when my mind goes back to this last summer and my ex-con friend, Sam. Sam grabbing his grub at Speedway. He's loading it into his little crapper car, driving back to his low-rent apartment for the evening before he heads out for his third shift job of security at a Walmart distribution center on the outskirts of town. That's his life. And he finds joy and purpose in that life, in those simple things, because he knows that's not what his life is. He has a new life in Christ. And that's the moment when I think about those two individuals, Dr. Fauci and Sam, that I realize what the Apostle Paul meant when he wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27, that God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. That's immediately where my mind goes. 1 Corinthians, that God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. That's Sam. That's what that is. It's Sam and it's Dr. Fauci. I'm telling you, the world is not going to get this. And if you're watching this or you're listening to this and you aren't a believer, I can't expect that you will understand this. But if you are a Christian, you'll get it. I look at those two men, Fauci and Sam. I see the decorated medical doctor, and I see the low-income ex-con. And I shudder in sadness and pity for the poor fool among those two. Dr. Fauci. I know the world won't get that, but you do if you're a believer. Be interested in your thoughts on that. Peter@peterheck.com is our email address. Peter@peterheck.com. Would love to hear from you. For those of you who are free subscribers, that's going to be it for the rest of the year. Because I'm going to try next week to take the week off and be with family. That's my intent. So I'm wishing you a Merry Christmas. I'm wishing you a Happy New Year. And then we'll be back after that. Okay? So those of you who are free subscribers. But I do want to suggest to you, if it at all interests you, and I'm not saying that it should, but if it does, on the other side of this break, I want to do a little bit more talking about Satan. How's that? Huh? That's a tease. No, specifically about this whole deal with the Satanic Temple. Did you see the Christian guy that goes in? The Satanic Temple had this statue of a goat man. It's like, it's iconography. It's like a satanic idol is what it is. And they filled out the form. They got it put up in the Iowa Capitol building. Christian dude, ex-military, goes in, just chops the thing's head off and topples it onto the ground. I got thoughts on all that. A lot of people had thoughts. And I got thoughts about their thoughts. And then I'm interested in your thoughts. But I want to try to look at this from a biblical, from a Christian perspective. Was the dude right in going in and doing that? Does it matter that it's a statue? Is this something that we're supposed to respond to? There's a lot of takes out there, and I want to give my take on the takes. How about that? But I'd also be interested in yours. So that's what we're going to do after the break. Those of you who are free subscribers, I would love it if you'd give us a shot. Heading into the new year, just sign up. Do the monthly thing, and you can stop when you don't feel like you're getting anything out of it. That's only fair, right? Or we will give you a cheaper price. You can get it at a discount, like $20 off, if you do it for the whole year all at once. That's more beneficial to us. So I want to make it beneficial to you by giving you the cheaper price. But I would love for you to give it a shot today. Just sign up for it, give it a shot, see if this kind of content, what you get, the Monday memo, the Wednesday Bible teaching, and then the full MemoPOD on Friday. See if it's worth it, okay? Be a great way to start the new year. Just try us for a year. What's it going to hurt? It can only help us. I'd like to think it would help you in the process. So let's take the break. Free subscribers, Merry Christmas. See you next year. Those of you who are paid subscribers, I'll see you right after this.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonigal's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.